welcome back to Business 163, Personal Finance, and this is our 7th and last video in this module. Alrighty, as you can see from the title slide, I've called this lecture Breaking the Cycle. What cycle? Breaking the cycle of debt. Sometimes we get ourselves into a vicious cycle that ends up to be sort of a stranglehold on our financial life, and that typically means it's a stranglehold on our personal life as well. And so how do we break this cycle that some of us find ourselves in, sort of tied to the chain of consumer debt? In fact, what cycle am I talking about? I'm talking about the cycle of debt where, perhaps you've maxed out your credit cards and all your available credit. You're juggling every month between which minimum payments to make. You're full of stress, sleeplessness, distraction of having too much debt. And just when you begin to make a dent in the outstanding balances, well, you give in to the temptation to buy yourself something nice on credit. Yeah, it can be a vicious cycle, and it is a vicious cycle for hundreds of thousands of Americans, if not millions of Americans, every year. So, let me give you a couple of strategies to pay off consumer debt. Here's strategy number one. Strategy number one, you list all of your outstanding debt and you list them in the order of interest rate. So go back to your monthly statements, go back on the website, find out what are you paying in terms of interest rate on each of these credit cards, and you list them all in order from the highest interest rate down to the lowest. Pick the account with the highest interest rate and commit then to using every available resource and opportunity to pay off the highest interest rate account as soon as possible. You are committing to pay far more than the minimum required payment. You are committed to trying to use every single quarter that's dropped on the floor, every dollar you can scrape up to pay that account off as quickly as possible. In fact, you're also considering taking on a second job, some side hustles, anything you can do, and you're certainly looking to stop all discretionary spending until that account is paid off. What about the other accounts that you've got? Well, you commit to make the minimum payments only on all the other accounts. You want to keep them current because obviously that's 35% of your FICO score, right? Your payment history. You want to keep them current, but you want to focus all of your attention on paying off that one account, the highest interest account. After that account is paid off, do not close the account. Remember, we talked about this already a couple of times, right? Take the card and put it at the bottom of your sock drawer and never pull it out again. After that, go back to your list, move to the next highest interest account, and as they say, lather, rinse, and repeat until that account is paid off. That is a very sound strategy to pay off consumer debt because it allows you to minimize the total outflow of interest you're going to pay over time to these various accounts by tackling the one that's charging you the most interest first. There is a downside to this strategy, however. What do you do if you owe so much to that account with the highest interest rate that it's going to take you a long time to pay it off, even with your best efforts and a side hustle, right? The trouble is sometimes if it's a really high balance to pay off, that can quite frankly be really demoralizing and emotionally difficult and psychologically difficult to sustain over time. And so for that, I give you debt strategy number 2. Here's debt payoff strategy number 2. List all of your outstanding accounts, kind of like the last time, right? Except this time you're listing them in order of the balance owed, and you're listing them from the lowest balance down to the highest balance. You sort of see right now, it's a slightly different deal, right? And regardless of the interest rate charged on that account, start with the account with the lowest balance. So you can see it's substantially different than the first payoff strategy. This time you're taking them in order of balances starting with the lowest one first. And like before, commit to using every available resource and opportunity to pay off this account as soon as possible, including second jobs, side hustles, selling blood, whatever you have to do. Of course, you're stopping all discretionary spending. make minimum payments on all your other accounts to keep them current, but you're focusing all your attention to pay off this account, the one that has the lowest balance. Now, after that account is paid off, again, do not close the account. Put the card at the bottom of your sock drawer, never pull it out again, and then move to the next lowest balance account in your list. Lather, rinse, repeat, and see the note at the end of the slide. You will, admittedly, end up paying more total interest over time, but because you are actually paying off accounts and closing the balance, bringing it to a zero balance, it's far more psychologically satisfying and emotionally encouraging to pay off accounts quickly rather than slowly. You can already sort of see, you can imagine how much greater an impact this has, and therefore how much easier it is to sustain over time when you get to, a little bit of a celebration. Hey, we paid that one off to zero. We paid that one off to zero. Those kinds of things, right? So this strategy works really well as long as you understand with strategy 2, you'll end up paying more interest than using strategy 1. All right. The bottom line, as we mentioned in module 2, the one on behavioral finance, is that a great deal of the work of financial literacy is done by breaking bad habits and creating new good habits, right? We talked about that in great detail. And where we are going is, you see the sign, we're headed towards financial freedom. We still oftentimes need to clean up the consequences of our prior choices. But quite frankly, no one said it's going to be easy, and no one said it's going to feel good in the short term, but breaking the cycle of consumer debt is one of the most empowering things in the world. It's one of the greatest gifts that you can give your future self. Well, I sure hope, ending on this note, that this module has been helpful for you and that you've learned a lot of things about your credit history, your credit score, and what affects it, right? Perhaps for a few of you, this is all review. You already understand how a credit card works, how an auto loan works, how a mortgage works. But for some of you, it may be the first time you've heard it in this detail, exactly what some of these terms really mean. And so I hope this provides a new context, a more detailed and specific context, how to think about your debt, your credit, and how you should manage it. We've given you some techniques and tools. I hope this serves you very well in your present and future financial life. Thanks so much. We will see you in the next module.